Yes, in this PowerPoint and video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the visual art basic vocabulary. And this is really important because in talking about works of art throughout history, then you need to be using our language and how we create this image. We use a set of principles. I think many of these words you've heard before, but we use them in a specific way. Now, I would say basically there are, when we think of an image or a composition or a design, artists are using the elements of art and the design principles or principles of art. And you're going to learn each of those terms, and that is part of our language, like how we use line or how we repeat a shape or line. Now, there are also certain terms that are used, I think you need to know, that are just general terms. And as I'm looking at this first slide in this PowerPoint, you know, form is a word that means a lot of things. The form of a letter, but in visual arts, it's actually, let's just think of a painting. There's three elements that are important, and that is the material being used, the form, and the meaning. So form here is used in this slide to say form, to create works of art, we use the elements of art and principles of design. And so form can also be used in another way to describe something that's three-dimensional versus flat. So form is used in a lot of different ways. In this context, I'm talking about the elements of art and the principles of design. Now, a work can be those three components. Material, actually it is just those three components. It is material. What is it? What is the artist using? Is it bronze or is it stone? Is it fabric? And so material is important as well as the form. Form is, again, elements of art, principles of design. And then we have, what is this work about? What is the meaning? And we also call that content. Meaning is content. Sometimes I'll use that interchangeably. Now, this is a part of a painting by an artist that you'll know. His name is Kehinde Wiley, contemporary artist. And you notice when I talk about how we reduce art to three components. Three components. I don't mention subject. I'm not saying art is made of material, form, and subject. Subject is not one of those three components. Subject can be part of meaning, but maybe you don't need a subject. And that's what we'll be looking at. The word subject is usually anyway used to assume that there's some illustrative element or content, like this young man in this slide, or a tree, or a person, or a still life. So subject is not part of the three components, but certainly can be part of meaning. Now, when we look at stylistically what a painting is, and these are those general terms, the first one is the painting is representational or figurative or realistic. Now, those three words are used interchangeably. So this, yes, is a representational painting, or you could say this is a figurative painting. You could say it's a realistic painting. I wouldn't use that term because to me it's idealized, but certainly you could. And these terms, by the way, if you see pages, this is in your text, which, as I said in my introductory video, is totally optional. You just need to be, it may help you understand something if you need to review that, but Everything that you're going to need for the course is in these videos and these PowerPoints. So be very clear what, in describing, what a painting is. It's representational if it has a subject you can recognize. That is from nature or an object, but it's also called figurative or realistic. Sorry, get this. Now, so if we look at this painting in talking about this, you would say this is a representational painting, and later for your exam in contemporary by the artist Kehinde Wiley, the subject is a young African-American male. Or you could say this is a figurative painting. The subject is a young African-American male. Now, the one reason I say I wouldn't use the word realism is because, the figure is realistic, it is idealized, but the background is not realistic. It's coming forward, it's in behind him, that could be wallpaper, but then it's coming on to, so, this is very abstracted, I would say. That's why I would not say this is a realistic painting, but it is a figurative or representational painting. Now, when I use the word realism, I usually, knowing that, it is a term that, and we're looking at the image on the left by Caravaggio. This is Baroque, 1600s. I would call, you could say this is representational, you could say figurative, but I would also use the term realism because the artist is trying to create this scene in a very realistic way. You don't see any abstract elements, so you could call this realism. But you would not call it a term that is used today, which actually since the 1970s, which is hyperrealism. And if you look at this painting on the right, this is a contemporary painting. This is 2015, and this is a style that's been popular. And hyperrealism, which is, it's also known as superrealism, but it's a highly resolute photograph. These artists are working from photographs, computer images, and recreating them, but when you look at Caravaggio, this is beautifully painted realism, not hyperrealism, because the camera was not invented until 1826, 250 years later. So these are styles that you want to know these terms in talking about works. And you also need to know the terms abstract. If a work doesn't have a recognizable subject, then it is called non-representational or non-objective. Non-objective is a word, a term that wasn't even coined until 1950s. Now, on the next slide, I believe, you could also call this abstract. You could call this an abstract painting, because abstract actually is used in reference to representational as well as non-representational. It could be used, but, to be very specific, you would say non-objective, no subject, or non-representational, but abstract could be used. So here is a work of art, a painting, an abstract or non-representational, non-objective painting by an artist. And as you can see, there's no subject, meaning something recognizable from nature. So when we talk about these non-objective works, it's about something else. It's about line and color and mark making, and we'll talk about that a little later. So a painting doesn't always have to have a subject, and that's why we reduce the three components to, again, material, which we'll talk about in a different module, form, which will begin in the next PowerPoint, and Meaning, what is this painting about? Now, so this is your another vocabulary word called abstract, an abstract painting. So abstract can be representational. This is a figure. You can see it's called Descending Staircase by Marcel Duchamp, and you would say this is an abstract painting. You would say that I would not say it's non-representational because you have something recognizable. But abstract is when you have something representational, most often that is altered or abstracted. Okay? So, again, many people, not art students, but just people in general would call this abstract, this painting of Nude Descending a Staircase. So, as I go back to this, although a subject certainly can be in a painting, like Wiley's painting, the form in visual arts precedes the subject. And that's why it's significant, because this painting, this abstract or non-objective painting, is a result of good design or good composition, and therefore it is balanced. Balance is one of the principles of design that we'll talk about. So you want to make sure that the form is balanced. So how is this composition balanced? So how do you know when a painting, for example, is balanced? Or a design in commercial art? And very simply, for a work to be visually balanced, your eye remains in sort of moving around these four sides. It doesn't go off or out of, we call this the picture plane. It remains moving around, and that's how we know a work is balanced. So artists are balancing these with certain ways that they use elements of art principle design. So, you know, just generally I would say that there's a linear element here that creates, and you're going to know these terms later. I'm just using the terms that you will know later as we go through Module 1. So this actually, if you follow my arrow, becomes an implicit, it's not really there, triangle shape. And then there's a lot of mark making, a lot of linear, a lot of activity. But then the artist is also balancing this by using this yellow here, 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 and here to also keep you sort of in this area versus going off the edge. So a lot of activity, but those are, I think, two ways I think that this painting is balanced by using those elements of art and principle of design. Now, this is a summary of everything we've talked about. And this has your definitions for what we spoke of. And I think this is what you'll see. You should be taking notes as well as making sure at the end you have covered all these questions on your worksheet. So this video I think completes that information. And again, as you go through the course, you will have these videos with the PowerPoints, just simply a PowerPoint for you to quickly review. Okay?